Hey everybody, welcome to PixelPlay Sidequests, your bonus content here every Friday on the PixelPlay YouTube channel. Adam CS Radical, Christian and Chris, Kaylan, PixelPlaycast, because he doesn't have his own Twitter. As still at this point where we just assume at this point he ain't got time for Twitter, so it's not happening anymore.
It's X now.
Is it though?
Elon Musk spent a lot of money for you not to be calling it Twitter.
Well, that's a lot of money that was wasted. Just like our AAA games that we were talking about earlier on this week in the show. Hey, it's a segue for something that already happened. So anyways, on to the current topic at hand. Kaylan, you finished Baldur's Gate 3. I know, it's amazing. You finished a game. We thought we'd never see it. I also think people were getting real tired of me reviewing games. So Chris, at some point, it's going to have to be your turn sooner or later. And no, doing achievements in Final Fantasy VI on Super Nintendo doesn't count.
Yes, it does.
So not gonna happen. But Kaylan, Baldur's Gate 3, it was the game of the year last year. I don't know, was it?
Kind of. So yeah, I played Baldur's Gate. I wrapped it up at about 70 hours of gameplay. If you guys listen to the podcast and you guys listened earlier in the fall, my wife and I, we started playing it as a co-op game to kind of fill our Dungeons and Dragons void when we couldn't play, and it didn't grab me. This game has co-op, and for me, the co-op kind of dragged it down. I feel like nothing against my wife, and thank God she doesn't listen to this podcast, but I think the game kind of is better experienced as an individual, where you can make all the choices for all your characters and stuff. And so Baldur's Gate 3 is interesting. It comes with a lot of hype, and it comes with a lot of awards, and there's a lot of buzz around this game, and a lot of people put it as their game of the year. My thing is that it does some things that are really unique, and it does some things that kind of annoy me. I think starting off with the interesting parts, there's a lot of character choice and creativity that comes in this. You can make a character that looks however you want, that acts however you want, and there's a lot of ways that you can handle this. And I don't think this is one of those games where no two playthroughs can be 100% similar. There's situations where you're going to be playing, and I'm going to spoil some early level missions for you, and there's not going to be any major spoilers for the whole game, but some of the stuff that happens in the first act, you have to go, you get approached by this this grove of elves and druids and stuff who are having an issue with some tieflings, and there's a bunch of ways that you can handle it, with some people living, some people dying, everybody living, everybody dying. There's so many ways that you can handle it. There's nothing stopping you from killing a main character within the first time. And if you look at the display that we have here, we have a bunch of player characters. One of those player characters, I never found them. I never had them in my party, right? And I was talking to my brother-in-law who played the game, and I'm like, yeah, where did you find her? Should I be going back? And he's like, no. He's like, the wizard that's right in the middle above the guy with the white hair, he never found that guy. And he was one of my 4 main characters for the entire game, and he never found him and never played with them. So there's a lot of variety in terms of how the game plays based on the choices that you make. For me, and this is something that some people might love, but one of the gripes for me, though, is that there is so much choice, and it is so vague to what to do, that oftentimes I had no idea what the hell I was supposed to do. I'd be looking at a map and I have no idea where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, how, what the next steps are. And the quests are sometimes vague, that you have to go and figure out what to do, and it's not entirely clear. And for me, as someone who doesn't have a lot of time to play video games, I found it annoying. I don't need to have a golden path that tells me exactly where to go, but to have some sort of prompts of hey, check out here, take a look at this, you're looking for this person, that stuff that I would have benefited from. But there's some times where I'm playing a level and I don't realize that I'm supposed to talk to somebody in order to get that access. And so with so many choices, there's a lot of things that can happen or not happen. So for example, I was trying to romance one of the characters, and I was being super nice and trying to go for all the romantic options I could. However, I never had that luck, and apparently I didn't get it because I didn't talk to this one person in Act 1, but I talked to them in Act 2. And so it's one of those things where it's if you want to do certain things, you have to go find this sparrow who carries this seed that you found in this ocean. Like, it's just so convoluted sometimes, and there's so many things that you have to get right just to get to a certain way that it's kind of can be unforgiving in that sense. Um, but the story was interesting. I was kind of like, I was constantly second guessing of like, how do I want this to play out? Like, I was playing with a guide because I'm like, I'm only playing this game once, and I want the outcomes that I want. So it was interesting the amount of things I could do and how I react to them. And so that for me is where I was at. I think it's really cool if that's something that interests you. Like, there's a lot of choice, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of variety, but it can be a little stressful in that sense. Gameplay wise, it's a little annoying. Like, you're just walking around and you walk pretty slow, and then the combat is turn-based combat, and I found that by the end I just kind of kept doing the same things over and over. I had the same party members, and that's just because I got used to them and who I wanted to work with. Some of the characters were more or less annoying, but like, it's a well done game. Like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite game of 2023. Like, there are games that I had a lot more fun with. There was a lot of games that I think were more fun to play, but this was an interesting game in that it is really impressive at what it does, and it's very interesting what it does, and that doesn't necessarily translate to fun. So I think from the achievements and what it does for the industry and the medium, super cool and well deserved of the accolades. But if you ask me, hey, what was the most fun that you had in 2023? Baldur's Gate would definitely probably be in the top 10, maybe even in the top 5. But for me, I don't think it would be game of the year. It does some impressive things, it does some cool things, but it also has some annoyances and some grievances that I think kind of hinder that. Like, I don't know if I want to play this game again. So that's for me. Great game. If I was giving it our Pixel Play review, I'd give this like a 5 out of 6. It is not a must play if this doesn't appeal to you. If you are not interested, it's not going to sell you on it. But if you are interested and you like this idea, like, there's some cool things here. It definitely feels like D&D the game. But yeah, it can be a little convoluted at times, and that I found was frustrating. But yeah, 5 out of 6, great game, not game of the year for 2023, in my opinion.
I think the more and more I think about it, like, I think the main reason why it doesn't work for me is specifically how it traverses. I think if it played much like, say, how Dragon Age runs, where it's still kind of third person and walk around and run around like you would with a controller, I think I could deal with it. The problem is with, like, the way that Baldur's Gate is set, and I'm sure, like, there is probably control support for it, but, like, mouse and keyboard is generally how it wants you to play.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like, the movement just feels weird, and I think it's because I'm so used to everything else having what I consider to be the normal set of movement. Like, Final Fantasy does it now, Persona does it, Trails does it, like, because I'm the big JRPG guy. So you'd think that these kind of games would be ones that I'd like, but there's just something about these games that don't work. And I found the same thing with Divinity Original Sin 2. Because, like, I heard nothing but great things about it, and I played it, and 2 hours later, I went, I'm so bored. Like, there's nothing going on. Now, you said when we were talking about it, when you were still in the process of going to it, that you thought similarly that it was a very slow start, and that once you got to a certain point, it
Act
really
1 is
picked up.
brutal. This game is a great game, but Act 1 is very boring, and the lack of on ramping in terms of like, hey, here's what you're supposed to do, and teaching the mechanics is very poor. That there's no reason why it doesn't teach you enough, or it doesn't like tutorialize the Act 1 enough to justify it being boring, and it's not interesting enough for it to be justified as long as it is.
I'm convinced that if this game played exactly like Knights of the Old Republic did, just with a 2023 polish to it, I think I would actually really like this game. Because when I did play, like, I played maybe about 3 hours or so of it, walking around this map and partaking in stuff. I love how the world's crafted. I love how the narrator describes every little thing. I love the amount of choices that you have with stuff. I love, like, the luck of rolling and stuff. Sure, I'm going to reload states quite a bit because, you know, that's how I play a lot of these games. But, like, I enjoyed how it was running, but I just couldn't get behind how the story wasn't progressing fast enough, and the actual traversing and the battle system was not as involving as I'd like it to be. Because even with JRPGs, like, it's not like you're doing a lot of fighting. You're still hitting, you know, fight, magic, whatever, but at least it feels faster. It feels more fluid. Whereas Baldur's Gate is a little slower, a little more technical, and I think that's where it gets to the point of being like, this is where it gets out of my scope. And I'm not saying like I'm not interested in anything that's technical, but if it's going to be a long game, technical only goes so far. Like I love XCOM. I will never finish an XCOM game. It takes too long and it gets eventually fries my brain out. And Baldur's Gate was a similar case where like I enjoyed little bits here and there, but it just kept frying my brain out and I just couldn't stick to it.
Yeah. One I do want to give a shout out, like it's interesting that like one of the best parts of this is the voice acting. Like the voice acting is really good. And just listen to the characters talk and stuff. So it's really good in that way. One of the problems, and I've just kind of came up with, is like you see characters in Act 1, and maybe it's just because I kind of was playing so slow to begin. Like I forgot who people were, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, it's so and so." And I'm like, "Who is it?" Or like I met someone at the end of Act 2, and they're like, "Hey, remember me from Act 1?" I'm like, "No, like I don't know who you are, and I don't care." So it's a good game. It does some very it's more a technical impressive game than it is a fun impressive game. Like there are more fun games that I had in 2023. So, but yeah, I would definitely say like if this interests you, if you are a D&D fan, check it out. If you are not into this kind of game and you are not into D&D, yeah, it's probably not for you.
Well, and you said it was a 5 if I'm not mistaken, right? 5 out of 6?
Yeah, I'd give it a 5 out of 6 as an overall. For this type of game, 6 out of 6, but as a general for like mass audience, 5 out of 6. It's not going to be for
comments
everyone,
or questions on
it's
that?
good at what it does.
No, I'm still interested in it, but I think it's because I played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 back in the 90s, and I can see what I think what they were trying to do here with the control style and stuff like that is still appease the original Baldur's Gate and then kind of just modernize it, because it was very much like the first Witcher game on PC, a lot more top down, a lot more like click to go here, click to go here.
Yeah, it makes
very
sense because I really did
PC.
like Witcher 3, and I did not like the first 2.
Exactly.
That's a great analogy. This is the Witcher 3 of Baldur's Gate. Like,
yeah,
you don't need to go back to the other 2, and I don't know if you can after playing this one, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And that's one of the things, like, and Adam, you made the comment of like going with a mouse and keyboard versus a controller. I played with the controller and it was fine for the most part, but it gets very complicated towards the end because you get a lot of characters and they swarm your characters. I'm like, hey, I want to shoot an arrow at this person, and because it's a mouse, it's a joystick or a controller, it's a little bit harder. And the problem is, it's like I end up clicking, I shoot, and I end up shooting my character. I'm like, yes, Baldur's Gate, that's what I want to do. I want to shoot an arrow at my party. Thanks. Like,
And
I mean,
that's
do
what
anything
quick
you want in
saves
the
are
game,
for.
but like, yeah.
This is just why save states in retro games are probably the better option.
But yeah,
that's
my review.
That's not your excuse to keep playing retro games, though. We expect reviews from you at some point, mister.
You have contractual obligations.
I'll finish a game and I'll review it. Fine.
All right, so Chris will be here next week when he talks about finishing, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on Sega Genesis soon.
I did play that this week. I'm not going to lie to you.
Of course you did. Work with idiots around here. But then again, takes one to know one. So what do I know? But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Sidequests. So another review in the can as we keep adding to our list for this year. Well, I guess technically it's last year, but this year nonetheless, because, we're not professional game journalists. We don't get codes, and we sure as shit don't have the time on our hands to play games right as soon as they release and get them in time for you guys. Oh no, when they put an embargo date, we go, no problem. We'll be fine. But yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for checking us out. So, obviously, you're here watching on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Remember, 250 episodes, serial podcast. I know you want it. So get that subscribes in. And if you already subscribed, well, you know what you got to do. You got to tell all your friends about it. Let them know where all the fun is. And speaking of fun, there's our link tree at the bottom there, linktr.ee/pixelplaypodcast, where we have a link to our Discord where the fun continues on after the show. And then obviously a link to all of our other socials, link to where else you can find the podcast. But that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next week for the main show. And then, like we said, every Friday here for SideQuest. Take care. Bye-bye for now.